All right, guys. Everybody have a note sheet for today. Need the note sheet for 3.13. 3.13. So, question on the homework before we get started. Now, first thing we're looking at is the zero product property. Zero product property. Zero product multiplied by zero. The zero product property states if two things, two expressions, two terms are being multiplied together and they equal zero, one of those two have to be zero. Well, yes, because if you multiply two things together and it equals zero, the only way we can multiply two expressions together and be zero if one of those two expressions is zero. That's the nice thing about the zero product property. It just says if we multiply two things together and get zero, so like this here, a times b equals zero. Well, a has to be zero or b has to be zero. One of those two has to be zero. That's all the zero product property says. Multiply two things together and get zero. One of them has to be zero. So if we look at the first problem here, k plus 1 times k minus 5. I do have two things multiplied together and they equal zero. So according to the zero product property, it means that either k plus 1 is 0 or k minus 5 is 0. Because if one of these two is 0, whatever value of k makes k plus 1 be 0, k minus 5 be 0, is going to be a value of k that's going to make the whole thing be 0. So with k plus 1, first thing we'd have to do is minus 1 from both sides, because our 1 minus 1 would be 0, leaving us with k. And 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So one of our values, or one of our solutions for this here is negative 1. Our k minus 5. First thing we can do is add 5, because negative 5 plus 5 is 0, leaving us k by itself. And 0 plus 5 is 5. So our two solutions, our two values of k that would make this be 0 are negative 1 and 5. And that's it. Questions on this here? You don't have to write this. I'm going to write this here. So I'm going to check it. Now, all I'm going to do is replace k with negative 1. And if this is the correct solution, it's going to make this entire part of the expression be 0. So negative 1 plus 1, well, negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6, and 0 times negative 6 is indeed 0. So that works. Our other value of k is 5, so we have 5 plus 1. Times 5 minus 5, so 5 plus 1 is 6. 5 minus 5 is 0, and 6 times 0 is indeed 0. So the two solutions, the two values of k that will make this be 0 are negative 1 and 5. Questions on this here? Let's look at the next one. 2m plus 3 times 4m plus 3. Again, we have two things multiplied together to equal 0, so one of these two has to be 0. So either 2m plus 3 is 0 or 4m plus 3 is 0. We have two things multiplied together to equal 0, so one of them has to be 0. Now with 2m plus 3, first thing we can do is subtract 3 from both sides. 3 minus 3 is 0, so it tells me 2m is equal to negative 3. Next thing we would need to do is divide both sides by 2, telling us m is equal to negative 3/2. So that's one of our solutions. For 4m plus 3, what would we do first? We would need 2 minus 3 from both sides, because our 3 minus 3 would be 0, telling us that 4m is equal to negative 3. And then we would Divide both sides by 4, telling us m is equal to negative 3 fourths. So those are our two values of m that would make this function be 0. Now, because negative 3 halves and negative 3 fourths don't reduce, they don't simplify farther than that, we can leave them as those fractions. Questions on this here? Bless you. We ready for the next one? Yes? So as we look at this next one here, x squared plus 10x plus 21, we have two things multiplied together that equal 0, yes? Do we? No, we have three things being what? Added together. Now, when we factored, our final solution was two sets of parentheses being multiplied together. So if we factor x squared plus 10x plus 21, if we can factor it, we do have two things multiplied together equals 0. We can use the zero product property to solve. Now, the first thing we need to do in solving by factoring, and most of the ways we solve these polynomials, these quadratics, is we need to get the equation equal to 0. There's only two methods that we solve by that won't have the equation equal 0. This one here, we need it equal to 0. Well, it is equal to 0, so that's good. So we can start factoring. The first thing we need to do is determine if there is a greatest common factor and making sure the number in front of x squared is positive. There is no greatest common factor. The number in front of x squared is indeed positive. So we can move on to step number 2. Our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now we're going to find the sign. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. Well, here the third term is positive, so our signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. So we would get plus and plus. Now we find the factors of the first and third term. So the first term is x squared. Well, the only factors of x squared are x and x and x. Factors of 21. Well, there's a few. 1 and 21, 3 and 7. Which one do we want to try first? 3 and 7. Now, we do want to check and make sure that these work. Now, I would not write our check underneath these sets of parentheses, because at this point here, we're not done. We still have to find the values of x that would make these be 0. So when I check these here, I always check it off to the side. X times 7 is 7x. 3 times x is going to be positive 3x. So we have positive 7x plus positive 3x. 7x plus 3x is 10x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Yes. So now we do have two things multiplied together to equal 0. So one of these two must be 0. So we can now set both of these equal to 0. So we can say that x plus 3 is equal to 0. And we can say that x plus 7 is equal to 0. So we can solve x plus 3 first. The first thing we would do is, guys, just keep your hands to yourself. This will tell us what x is negative 3. X plus 7 is equal to 0. So the first thing we would need to do here is to 7 from both sides, telling us x is negative 7. Questions on this here? Now, if we wanted to, we could check this and make sure, because there are sometimes we get answers that don't look like they're the correct answer. But we could take negative 3 and plug it back in to the original expression, our x squared plus 10x plus 21, and see, does this give me 0? If it does, it is the correct answer. If it doesn't, it's not. Now, since there are no variables on that side, we can just plug it in. We would need to make sure that we put parentheses around the negative 3. So negative 3 squared plus 10 times negative 3 plus 21 does indeed equal 0. We can do the same thing with negative 7, and it would also give us 0. So that is telling us both of these are solutions, both of these work. Questions on any of this here? We ready for the next one? 4x squared plus 20x minus 24. Now the equation is indeed equal to 0, so that's good. Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? 4. So we can factor that 4 out. And if we factor the 4 out of 4x squared, we're left with x squared. If we factor the 4 out of 20, we get 5x. And if we factor the 4 out of 24, we have 6. So after pulling the 4 out, what's inside the parentheses, what we have left over, is going to be x squared plus 5x minus 6. Now, since we don't have any other greatest common factors, we can write our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now we need to find the sign. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. Here, the third term is negative, so the signs are opposite, plus and minus. When the third term is negative, we're not even looking at the middle term. We're just saying since the third term is negative, signs are opposite. That's it. One's going to be plus, one's going to be minus. Now we're going to look at the factors of the first and third terms. Only factors of x squared are x and x. Now our factors of 6 are 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Which one do we want to try first? 2, 3. X times negative 3 would be negative 3x. 2 times x is going to be positive 2x. And negative 3x plus 2x would give us negative x. Is that the middle term we wanted? No. Now we could switch the 2 and 3. I didn't switch the 2 and 3. Because if we switch it, x times negative 2 is negative 2x. 3 times x would be positive 3x. And x, negative 2x plus 3x would give us a positive 1x, which is also not the middle term we wanted. So what can we try next? 1 and 6, that's the only other choice. Do we want the 1 or the 6 to be positive? 6. And if we check this here, x times negative 1 would be negative x. 6 times x would be positive 6x, telling us that the middle term would be positive 5x. Is that the middle term that we wanted? Yes, right? Now we have two things multiplied together to equal 0, so one of them has to be 0. So x plus 6 could be 0, x minus 1 could be 0. Now because the 4 does not have an x attached to it, we don't have a way to put a value in for that x. There's nothing we can do there because it's just a constant. It's actually a scalar, so it doesn't really matter. We really can only make the x minus 1 and the x plus 6 be 0. Those are the two that we're going to look at. Now with the x plus 6, we would minus 6, telling us x is equal to negative 6. With the x minus 1, we would add 1, telling us x is equal to 1. So the two solutions for this here is -6 and 1. Questions on this here? Questions on anything we've done so far? We're not going to worry about the 3n squared minus 75 yet. We haven't factored those. We haven't worked with them yet, so we'll leave it. (15b squared plus 4b minus 4). Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? No. And it is equal to 0, so we're good there. So we'd have two sets of parentheses equals 0. Now we need to find the signs. The third term is negative, so the signs are opposite. One's going to be positive, one is going to be negative. It really doesn't matter where we put the plus or the minus, if we put the plus first or the minus second, or the minus first and the plus second. One of them just needs to be plus, one of them needs to be minus. 15b squared. Well, the b squared, the factors of b squared are going to be b and b. Now, the factors of 15, we have two of them. We have 1 and 15, or 3 and 5. Now, we need to pick which one we're going to try first to see if we get the correct factors from it. So 1 and 15 or 3 and 5? 3 and 5. And again, our last step is to check, so it really doesn't matter where we put the 3 and 5. We just need to put one of them as 3 and the other as 5. Now we have the factors of 4, which is 1 and 4, or 2 and 2. Do we want to try 1 and 4 or 2 and 2 first? One and 4. And at this point here, we will check. 3b times -4, 3 times -4 would be -12b. 1 times 5b would be plus 5b. -12b plus 5b would be -7b. That is not the middle term we want. So what we can do is we can switch the 1 and 4. 3b times -1 would be -3b. 4 times 5b, 4 times 5 would be positive 20b. -3b plus 20b is positive 17b. So 1 and 4 did not work. So the other option we can try is 2 and 2. If 2 and 2 doesn't work, we can switch from 3 and 5 to 1 and 15. At this point here, 3b times -2 would be -6b. 2 times 5b would be positive 10b. And -6b plus 10b, -6 plus 10, would be positive 4b. Is that the middle term we wanted? Yes. If we were factoring, we'd be done. But since we're trying to solve, we now need to set both of these equations equal to 0. Because according to the zero product property, if two or more things are multiplied together that equals 0, one of them must be 0. So for 3b plus 2, the first thing we would do is subtract 2 from both sides, telling us 3b is equal to -2. At this point here, we would divide both sides by 3, telling us b is equal to -2 thirds. For 5b minus 2, first thing we would do is add 2 to both sides, telling us 5b is equal to 2. Then we would divide both sides by 5, telling b is equal to 2 fifths. Questions on this here? Okay. We ready for the next one? Seven p squared minus 38p minus 24. Is their greatest common factor? No. Is it equal to 0? Yes. The sign of the third term is what? Negative, so the signs are opposite. One's going to be positive, one is going to be negative. Now we need to find the factors of the first and third term. Since the first term is 7p squared, so its factors, well, factors of p squared are p and p. Factors of 7 are 1 and 7. Are there any other factors? No. So we just need to put the 7 in one of the two spots with p. It really doesn't matter. I just always stick it with the first one. Factors of 24. There's a few. We have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. We've got 4 different factors with 24. Which one of those factors do we want to try first? 3 and 8. Seven p times negative 8 is going to be negative 56p. 3 times p is going to be positive 3p. And negative 56p plus 3p is going to be negative 53p. Is that the middle term we wanted? No. So what we could do is we could switch the 3 and 8. And if we switch the 3 and 8, I didn't switch the 3 and 8, I just rewrote the same thing. 8 and 3, there we go. 7p times negative 3 would be negative 21p. 8 times p would be positive 8p. Negative 21p plus 8p would be negative 13p. Is that what we wanted? No. So, we'll need to switch and pick a different factor of 24. So what other factor of 24 do we want to try next? 4 and 6. Which number do we want to put next to 7? Doesn't really matter. We can go on and check it. 7p times negative 4 would be negative 28p. And 6 times p would be plus 6p, which would be negative 22. All right. We'll switch the 4 and 6. Try it again. 7p times negative 6 is going to be negative 42p. 4 times p is plus 4p. Negative 42p plus 4p is negative 38p. Is that what we wanted? Yes. So 7p plus 4 is equal to 0. P minus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, since we did find the correct factors, we do have 2 or more things multiplied together equals 0, so one of these has to be 0. So 7p plus 4, the first thing we can do is subtract 4 from both sides, telling us 7p is equal to negative 4. Divide both sides by 7. Negative 4 over 7 doesn't reduce, so we have negative 4/7. With p minus 6, we would add 6 to both sides, telling us p is equal to 6. Questions on this here? Questions on anything we've done so far? Be ready for the next one. So we have this problem here, yes? Is there a greatest common factor between our 3 terms? 3, is it also equal to 0? No. We need to solve that first. Because before we can do any of the factoring steps, we need to get this equal to 0. So to move the negative 9p from the right side to the left side, we need to add 9p to both sides, because negative 9p plus 9p would be 0. Now our 3p squared, 9p, and negative 120 are not like terms, but we're going to rewrite it in standard form. Standard form says that we rewrite it in order of descending power. So our exponent with the biggest, so our variable with the biggest exponent is going to go first, second biggest, and decreasing down to our number without a variable. So p squared p 120 would be standard form. Now, yes, there is a greatest common factor between these three terms, and it is 3. So if we factor 3 out of all three terms, we should end up with p squared plus 3p minus 40. And we get this here. Now we need to factor this. So we would write our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. If the third term is positive, our signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. So here one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative, because our third term was negative. Factors of p squared are p and p. Now our factors of 40 are 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3 doesn't work, but 4 and 10, or 5 and 8. Which set of factors do we want to try first for 40? 5 and 8. Which one do you want positive? Which one do you want negative? 8 negative. Once we get it set up, we can check. P times negative 8 would be negative 8p. 5 times p would be positive 5p. So negative 8p plus 5p would be negative 3p. Did we get the correct middle term? I'd say yes and no. Yes, we got the correct number, but no, we got the wrong sign. So whenever I get the correct middle number but wrong side, I just flip the signs. Because when we flip them, p times 8 is going to be positive 8p. Negative 5 times p is going to be negative 5p. And 8p minus 5p would be positive 3p. So now we have the correct middle number and correct sign. And since we have two or more things multiplied together to equal 0, one of these is going to have to equal 0. So either p minus 5 is 0 or p plus 8 is 0. So at p minus 5, we would add 5 to both sides. Those would cancel, telling us p is equal to 5. With p plus 8, we would minus 8 from both sides, telling us p is equal to negative 8. Questions on this here? Questions on anything we've done so far? Do we feel comfortable with these? Yeah. Even if we did, because here we only had one term that was not on the right side. Even if we had more than one, we're just adding or subtracting, we're just moving them over. We get it all on the same side, we factor, set them equal to 0 and solve. That's it. Questions on this here? Y'all need to see another example of one of these. All right.